1015 FM, 720 AM. KDON, the talk of Las Vegas.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the #1 professional wrestling radio show in Las Vegas. This is the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. 1 full hour of wrestling news, entertainment, and lots of Sin City surprises from inside the squared circle. Now, let's bring on the host. Here is Mark Hoke.
Oh, you guys thought you wouldn't hear me until tomorrow morning. Wrong! Wrong! I'm Mark Hoke. Thanks for being with me tonight as we bring you the Mark Hoke Show, the #1 professional wrestling news and entertainment show in Las Vegas, and to hell with it around the planet. Myanmar just downloaded a podcast the other day. That is amazing. So, of course, everybody download this podcast at markhokeshow.podbean.com or all your favorite podcast outlets. We certainly do appreciate it all across this wonderful big blue planet. It's pretty amazing. Now, of course, we don't have Fish. He's working tonight. Joe DeFalco has an event going on at Future Stars of Wrestling. Maybe he'll let you in after the show. You can go down and watch the last hour of it. So guess who is sticking around here with me after surviving 2 hours of Common Ground, which is here on KDWN, 1015 FM, 720 AM before this time slot. It's Pat Casale.
This should be fun, buddy. This is going to be a blast.
Yeah, look, you don't have to. Well, actually, we are talking a little politics sort of tonight, but we're generally staying away from it. Pat, you've got to be relieved. We're not talking politics.
I'm just looking at these numbers, and I'm blown away, buddy.
What Pat is referring to is the first topic that we wanted to hit tonight, because I know Pat hasn't been watching a ton of wrestling, but I know he's been a wrestling fan for a long time. WWE just released their quarterly report. Dear Lord. Pat, you remember the days when WWE made, and any wrestling organization made money by getting a little bit of advertising deals on their local TV station and selling some popcorn at the live event and selling out some T-shirts, you know? And,
are you not for back east?
Yeah, I'm from back east.
I remember we had to go to UHS to try to get the certain wrestling shows on.
Yeah, you remember the fuzzy cable?
Yes.
Yeah. Kids' times have changed.
$333.4 million revenue for the first quarter, an increase of 27%. That's a $1.2 billion year they're looking at.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be more, too. It'll be more than that.
$1.3 billion. I mean, it's unbelievable. This blows me away.
They did, let me just pull all my numbers here real quick, because I'm actually in the production area. So give me 1 second. But I believe it was around a $66 million profit for the quarter, Pat. Of course, they just got rid of people because of budget cuts. Whatever. But these numbers are just sick. A lot of it resulting, of course, they had WrestleMania.
156,000 fans.
For the 2 nights at WrestleMania. So they did that. They re-signed a new deal with A&E. Because if you haven't noticed, A&E does a lot of WWE-themed shows. And I think they had about 3 of them on last year alone. So they re-upped that deal. They did a new broadcasting deal with NBC Group to air episodes of Raw and SmackDown and some other stuff. They did a deal with Fanatics to do, NFTs, trading cards, e-commerce, licensed merchandise. And guess what? The TV deals are coming up soon. You know those ones where they get a few $1 billion out of it from Fox and USA Network. Yikes. This is,
you know you should be playing with right now?
What?
You should have Ric Flair in the back. Woo! Woo! I mean, unbelievable.
Vince McMahon is a very happy guy at this point. But it's,
do you realize what that company was worth when he got it from his father?
Not that much.
It wasn't $1 million.
No. And you and I remember the days back when WrestleMania 1 first happened, and Vince mortgaged everything, got every dime he could possibly find to put WrestleMania 1 on, put it on closed circuit. brought in all the celebrities, risked it all to complete his national expansion. And, of course, it succeeded beyond his wildest dreams, and now here we are. And, of course, WWE making a lot of money off of the TV deals, the streaming deals, because they're streaming everywhere now. Peacock has been huge for them. Going to NBC with Peacock has absolutely blasted their viewership on, especially that's where they are now premium live events, Pat, just so you know, you can't call them pay-per-views anymore. They are premium live events, but that has expanded their reach exponentially. It's a juggernaut now, but the funny part is, with as bad as the economy is, their stock actually went down. Can you believe that?
You know what? I don't know how, but I will tell you this. When you look at wrestling and you look at how many of these men and women have gone on to be movie stars, celebrities, etc. I mean, years ago, you were just a wrestler. You were Bruno Sammartino and whatnot. Now it's like, I'm going to go through WWE to get on to NBC or to get to work for Disney. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that's part of the appeal, I think. Of course, you have WWE and AEW, the two main companies right now. But WWE does present more opportunities for their performers. Of course, we've seen recently The Rock and John Cena. The Rock is now the number one actor in Hollywood.
Unbelievable.
And Cena is working on that, too. He's been doing a ton of movies.
John Cena's killing it, too. I mean, it's unbelievable.
You see John Cena everywhere. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, commercials,
voiceovers, commercials. He is all over the place.
Now here's a question for you. Are any of these wrestlers kicking some of that money back to the WWE?
Actually, some of them are. John Cena actually has a deal that WWE still has a piece of him. Believe it or not. I think The Rock does, too. I'm not sure, but I know Cena does.
I wouldn't be surprised if The Rock got out of that deal. He's smart enough to. Maybe he worked it out. But you know what's funny? His father was a professional wrestler.
Yep.
And he was a football player that couldn't make it. I mean, the last football player I remember that played in the Kansas City Chiefs back in the '60s was big cat Ernie Ladd.
Yep.
And he and then he became a wrestler, but he never a movie star. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, didn't make it as a wrestler. I mean, excuse me, as a football player, but man, he's a monster wrestler, and a body on him is amazing.
Yeah. Did you see? And there was actually just a post he put up that he turned 50, and I'm 52, and his legs are just they're huge. That dude, I don't know what he's doing.
His guns are huge,
but it's amazing. When you have that kind of time, that all you have to do is work out. If I wish I had that kind of time, but. Yeah, so a wild report there, but but like I said, I think it's interesting though the stock went down a little bit. I think it's around $56 somewhere in there. And you got to wonder if that. I mean, Pat, you're into investments. Is that something you'd dime on?
I had no idea that I could make money with the WWE.
You're gonna give it a shot?
I never thought about investing in a W. I mean, I'm floored. Floored.
And the other thing that they're doing right now too, that they've announced, if you didn't know, Money in the Bank is going to be here in July, the pay-per-view, and a lot of people were really surprised to see that they were going to do the pay-per-view at Allegiant Stadium, because normally your big events, the big four, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, actually usually just those two are in a stadium, but then of course SummerSlam was here last year at Allegiant, but now they're going to be doing all their live events apparently. The premium live events in stadiums, which is it's going to be pretty amazing.
But think about it though. You're watching, and they're great athletes. Don't get me wrong, but some of it's orchestrated. There's plans, a way to do it. But you're watching athletes that who's probably going to win most of the time. Yet they sell out, and these people are nuts. They go to. Have you seen the body of work that's come? I mean. He has 100 credits, The Rock. Right now, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 projects about to come out. Mm-hmm. How much money has he made?
He's got to be $500 million. He bought the XFL from Vince after it went bankrupt, so he's going to be starting the XFL up.
How nuts is that?
I think that, and you know what? That's just like burning money for him. Isn't that crazy? But yeah. So, guys, if you want to get your WWE stock, I'm sure Vince McMahon's not going to complain.
I'd like to meet him.
He would be a fascinating individual to sit down with for a while.
And not like on a radio show. I'd like to have dinner or lunch, just hang out with him here, just have him here, let him present himself. I mean, he seems like a cool dude.
We had talked about this a while back on the regular show on Sunday, which airs at 8 a.m. here, that if as much as people rip Vince for the way WWE is doing things right now with the actual wrestling, the not learning from him and not listening to how he built his business. He was on the Pat McAfee show a couple months ago as they led up to WrestleMania and talked about how where he started, how he built the business, what his philosophy is on all sorts of different ideas. And you can't help but, as much as you just, wrestling fans right now are like, oh God, the wrestling's terrible. But learning from that guy, that's how you build yourself. You learn from successful people. And Vince McMahon is one of those people that, if you look at this now, how can you not want to pick the guy's brain?
Irony here is, if you go back to the day, like back when Vern Gagne, back in those days and whatnot, you got to ask yourself, how in the world did wrestling from the 50s evolve to what we have today?
It was Vince.
I know that. Yeah. No. But look at how the show has evolved. I mean, people have to wake up and realize it is entertainment at its best. And you know what? It captivates the millions of people. How many watch the W during the week?
SmackDown gets about 2.2 million. Raw is typically around 1.5. AEW is doing about 1 million on their show on Wednesday night, and then Rampage is about 500,000.
Would CNN love to have some of that?
You think?
End of story.
Now, just imagine what they're going to do on their next TV deal. They got $1 billion out of Fox. And now all these companies are coming after them because they're realizing that the content is so popular, and it blew Peacock, helped blow Peacock up. And I can't imagine what the number's going to be when, if say CBS would decide, maybe we can get on this.
Which huge sport in the world, is starting to follow the WWE's path? NFL.
And I would agree. It's funny that you look at, when Vince started the WWE Network a while back, everybody thought he was nuts. So you're going to put all the content online, and you're going to, you think people are going to pay $9.99 a month to watch this? Are you crazy?
They're doing it. Think about
He was the first to do it.
Brock Lesnar comes out as a wrestler. First, he's a football player who couldn't make it, goes into wrestling. Goes into UFC, back to wrestling. That guy's making a ton of money.
Mm-hmm.
And he's obviously somewhat of a badass, because in the UFC, that was legit. But think about that. Vince McMahon's a genius.
He is.
And you know what? He's laid down the path for the family, to his daughter and his son, to follow in his footsteps.
Yeah, and the funny part is, he just fired Shane a little while ago. Whoops.
For now.
But for now. I'm sure Shane will be back in the fold. But yeah, so a very interesting stock report from WWE there. Quarterly report. But one thing that Vince has stayed away from that AEW may have a problem with very shortly is, of course, the superstar CM Punk. Mr. Punk, of course, is very pro-choice. Apparently, is quite a liberal, and that's fine. By
the way, and Punk is a male.
Yes.
When I said that on the show previous, I said more men are pro-choice than women. Were you surprised?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's a fact.
So, CM Punk, when the Texas Heartbeat bill came out, did a show in Texas where he came out on the TV show. And I was kind of surprised Tony Khan, the owner of AEW, let him do this. That has a picture of a uterus that says, "Get your own, then tell it what to do." And now when this situation with Roe v. Wade happened, Punk has been getting in some massive Twitter fights with people, blowing everything up. And, one thing that Vince McMahon always did was generally stayed away from politics, hot button issues. Now, what do you have we had Sergeant Slaughter turning into an Iraqi sympathizer back for one WrestleMania when Hogan beat him. And of course, you always had the Russians. And this is something that's been done for decades in wrestling. You had the German, like Fritz von Erich, for example, was the evil German. Of course, reflecting the Nazis and so on. But the issue with Punk really doing this, he's going to be challenging for the AEW World Championship here in Las Vegas at Double or Nothing at T-Mobile. And my question to you, Pat, of course, we've seen many entertainers get on the board with liberal causes and be very vocal about it, and any political cause really. And this, and I don't want to just put it on the left. This is on the right too, and bringing politics into their entertainment. Pat, do you think this is a good idea for Punk to be doing this, or should he just kind of keep this to himself and not interjects such a heavy issue into such an entertainment venue like professional wrestling?
Let me just say this. When you consider where sports has lost a lot of viewership and support, is they got political. Wrestling should not get political. It should stay where it's at. And you know what? You could have what you do on your own time. I support. It shouldn't interfere with wrestling or the WWE. Let me tell you something. Brittany Griner, the women's basketball player, was one of the first people to make sure that they don't play the national anthem. Right now, I wonder what she's thinking in the gulag in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you, the biggest problem that athletes have made in my lifetime. You're talking to somebody who ate, drank, and I did sports radio for decades. Loved it. I ate, drank, and slept sport. Not only did I bet on it, I loved it. I lived it. And when you consider what they've done to me, and I'm like, you know what? Screw you. You want to take a knee and you want to do that? You want to get political? I'm not going to spend my money.
Yeah, and that's the issue that I worry about. AEW is a company that's just been around for a little over 3 years now, and they're building ground slowly. I'm sure that they're going to be heading down a lot of the roads that WWE is doing. But the last thing that you want is the guy that you're putting on top, as popular as he is. And CM Punk is just about bulletproof. But the last thing for now, but he's going to turn the gun on himself here, I think, because the last thing that you want is someone not watching a show that is, slowly building in ratings and popularity to have one person out there saying, you know what, I don't want to watch this show because of this guy. Or going, if you go to a AEW event and you're walking by the stand with the kids and they may want to buy a CM Punk t-shirt and they say, no, you can get Hangman Adam Page's shirt, get something else, but I don't want you buying that. I've watched too many TV shows. I watch sports where the ratings have dropped and TV shows get canceled, and you look at the popularity of movies and everything else, and as much as I respect Punk, I think he's one of the greatest performers in the world, and I don't think there's any question about it.
But you're dealing with a sport that is ruled by a man who will cut that man out in a New York minute.
Yeah,
Tony, he will eliminate him in a New York minute.
Well, Vince McMahon would.
That's how McMahon runs his business.
Well, now Tony Khan is the one that runs AEW, which is where Punk is right now.
Yeah,
but Tony's also a conservative too. But he's also a businessman. That the Khan family, if you don't know, runs the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And you know what they'll do? They're gonna sit there and Vince McMahon will intercede one way. He'll give them advice. They talk to him, and so Vince is gonna say, you know what? It's up to you. It's your brand. See, unlike the NFL, this is something totally different. He's going to say, look, we're done. You want to do that? We're not. You're not a part of us. I
was really surprised that Tony let him wear that shirt in Texas. That was a stunner to me. But I think, and I understand that we're all passionate about issues on either side, and that's fine. But the one thing that I can't stand is when I'm using sports, wrestling or anything like that as an outlet to get away from it. Like for what I do here, I'm working with you and Steve Sanchez and all these guys. Man, I don't want any politics. I just want to go home and have some fun.
Growing up as a kid, we used to watch the wrestling, and then we would wrestle and body slam one another. So I was trying to lift weights at a club, and I had to get initiated. And they were wrestlers, type of wrestling thing. The one guy, and he actually went on the tour through the South. And let me tell you right now, it's a passion. And you know what? We weren't political when we were messing around. So these people, I promise you, because this is a private type of organization, unlike the NFL, they're not going to be able to do it.
They've got to be careful with this. They've got to be careful. So the last thing I'm an AEW fan. The last thing I want is to see politics get pulled into AEW. And and Tony Khan, the owner, has been been pretty nice about it. They had a younger guy named Dante Martin who was wearing a BLM armband for a while.
I didn't realize that was the same guy. The owner of the Jacksonville Jaguar. I had no idea.
It's his son.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, there you go.
They got a few dollars.
Tony's playing with some house money on that one, that's for sure.
Wow.
But yeah, so a really interesting situation with CM Punk coming up. But I did mention Double or Nothing, and Pat, you should go to one of these events coming up for AEW. I think you'd have a blast.
I might have to. My wife would like that because she enjoys wrestling too.
End of the month, we've got Dynamite is going to be here. They'll do their Dynamite show on that Wednesday night. Rampage on Friday, and then the pay-per-view, I believe, is on Sunday. I've got tickets for that, but I got my credentials that I get to go on Wednesday and Friday.
Well, I mean, you're doing a hell of a job for them, man. They need you.
Well, I know that. I'm mad I didn't get credentialed for Double or Nothing, but it's okay, guys. I'll come to Dynamite and Rampage and be a happy camper. It's all good.
I like it,
but that's going to be exciting. But bringing up the whole situation with wrestling and how they're making money hand over fist. AEW pretty much sold out Double or Nothing. I know it's sold out now. It was just about sold out right away when the tickets went on sale here for the T-Mobile Arena. They also, of course, have Dynamite and Rampage coming. They also announced a joint show with New Japan Wrestling.
No.
At the United Center in Chicago in June, and it's sold out almost immediately.
This is really that big worldwide?
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
People are excited, man, and I'll tell you what. I don't know what the ticket sales are so far for Money in the Bank. I still have to get mine. I probably ought to do that pretty soon here. But Money in the Bank at Allegiant Stadium is going to be off the hook. That is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. The last time Money in the Bank was here in I want to say, what year was that? 16 or 17? And I saw 2 world title changes that night. It was amazing. So I saw Goldberg wrestle when he was a champion, wrestle here at the MGM many moons ago. Nice.
I loved Goldberg.
Yeah, he was at the SummerSlam at Allegiant Stadium.
And Austin was my son's. He loved him.
Nice. Yeah, this is gonna be, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. So Pat, you need to get more into this wrestling thing.
My wife might like that actually.
Yeah, there you go.
That would be cool.
Hey, we should all go to Money in the Bank.
It's Money in the Bank.
That would be all right. Of course, this is the Mark Hoke Show. I'm Mark Hoke, along with special guest host tonight, Pat Casale, sitting in.
It's my pleasure.
The underboss. Now you're under the consigliere tonight.
I like it.
Not literally under, but, it's all good. But, of course, we're here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM, the talk of Las Vegas. We're going to take a break, and then I'm going to take Pat down nostalgia road at some point here tonight. This could be some serious entertainment, and I think we might get in an argument or two. Pat's used to that for his show on Common Ground here, which is from 6 to 8 here on Saturday night on KDWN. But we appreciate you being around. Thank you so much, and we will be right back. Want more of The Mark Hoke Show? Follow us on Twitter at Mark Hoke Show, like us on Facebook at The Mark Hoke Show, and visit markhokeshow.com to keep up with everything happening with the show. And remember to check out all of our archive shows on YouTube at The Mark Hoke Show, and download our podcasts at markhokeshow.podbean.com and all your favorite podcast outlets. So join The Mark Hoke Show family today, and thanks for listening.
1015 FM, 720 AM. KDON, the talk of Las Vegas.
Now, let's return to the Mark Hoke Show. The Mark Hoke Show. Here again, your host, Mark Hoke.
Ha ha. Another Saturday night and you're stuck with Mark Hoke. But that's okay, because we have fun on this show. Gosh darn it. That's why we dominate on Sunday. It's a lot of fun. I'm Mark Hoke. Pat Casale sitting in. Of course, no Fish, no Joe DeFalco. We'll get to have them tomorrow on a regular time at 8 a.m. But, Pat, are you having fun?
Yeah, I am actually. I'm actually floored by some of the things. You learn something new every day, and that was something really new.
Well, that's part of the fun for me about wrestling isn't just, watching the shows, but everything that goes on behind the scenes is just absolutely fascinating. It's an incredible business. It really is. And, you trust me, you can go down the rabbit hole in this stuff. No doubt about it.
I like that.
Well, of course, tomorrow is a WWE live or premium live event. Man, I still can't get that right sometimes. WWE WrestleMania Backlash tomorrow. And if you don't know, we'll have our predictions tomorrow. But just to run the card down real fast for you. Bobby Lashley, the, of course, former MMA guy, has been wrestling for quite a while, will be taking on the Giant Omos, as he is managed by MVP.
How many MMA guys are wrestling?
There's a bunch. There's a lot of MMA guys that have transitioned over.
So when you really think about it, the game now is much more on the level. Legit.
Yeah. And if you watch AEW, they're more into the wrestling as in WWE is more sports entertainment-y. It's watch an AEW show sometime and you will see it gets a little rough. It does.
So they really do get hammered.
They hammer each other pretty hard. That's for sure. It'll be Happy Corbin and Madcap Moss in a match that nobody cares about whatsoever. A great one here with AJ Styles, of course, taking on Edge. The Tag Team Championship unification is off as of a couple weeks ago, as Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns are now interjected into the six-man match. It'll be Drew McIntyre and RK Bro, Randy Orton, and Riddle. The Raw Tag Team Champions.
Randy Orton?
The Randy Orton. Just celebrated his 20th year of wrestling on WWE.
Wow.
They will be facing the Bloodline, Roman Reigns, and the Usos, Jimmy and Jay, the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, along with Paul Heyman. Of course, Reigns and the Usos, descendants of the Wild Samoan Hanoi family. Cody Rhodes, son of the American Dream, has just entered WWE. Of course, you didn't know that. He will be getting a WrestleMania rematch against Seth freaking Rollins.
That's Dusty Rhodes' son?
That is Dusty Rhodes' son, one of them. And Charlotte Flair, the SmackDown Women's Champion, in an I Quit match against former UFC champion Ronda Rousey. So they will be facing off.
So
there
Ronda
as well.
Rousey is now a wrestler.
She was, yeah. She took some time off for a while. But, yeah, she's already done a little bit of wrestling herself.
Less blood, I would imagine. Less pain.
You would think so.
Wow.
But, it was funny that you said Randy Orton. If you look at some of the people on this card, Charlotte Flair, the daughter of the Nature
Flair.
Boy, Cody Rhodes,
Dusty,
Randy Orton, and, of course, all the Samoans. The second generation and third generation, Randy's actually a third generation. It's, for you and I, we've been around for a little while, so we've seen a lot of these people's dads, even some grandfathers, like Peter Maivia, of course, who was the grandfather of The Rock. I'm sure you remember Peter Maivia a little bit. Bob Orton's dad.
When you talk about you and I being around, I was just thinking here, my grandfather was alive when I went to my first live wrestling match in Albany with my grandfather, my uncle, my cousin Johnny. You know who we saw? Johnny Powers and Dick the Bulldog Brower.
There you go.
That's like 68.
That's a pull, by the way.
68. I was about 7 or 8 years old. All right? So we're talking over 50 years ago.
That's something, man. I'm trying to remember the first one I went to. I remember the main event. It was supposed to be Ivan Putski and Jesse Ventura when they had an arm wrestling thing, but Jesse didn't go, so Putski just beat up Iron Mike Sharp.
He was strong.
Oh, but I got to see that night. Sergeant Slaughter was actually teamed with the Samoans, and if I remember right, it was against Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, and Lou Albano was in that match. That was a blast. Man. That was a blast. But boy, I'll tell you. and the reason I
remember Dino Bravo.
Oh yeah. Did you ever see the Dark Side of the Ring with him? Oh. Yeah, he was mixed up with an interesting crew, wasn't he?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he was in with the gangsters, man. Oh, man. He was in with the mafia in Canada.
I had no idea. I mean, I just go back to that era. Oh man, wow. I remember like in 7th and 8th grade, we're doing these things, and oh my God, it was such a big deal. Wow.
But isn't it amazing when you think about it, Pat, just how many children have followed their families into this industry?
Isn't it amazing how much more money they're making than their family, their parents?
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. You look at, I was just running down a list of one list of top second-generation wrestlers. And you look at people like Bret Hart, who was the son of Stu Hart. Randy Savage was Angelo Paffo's kid.
Oh, Randy Savage was a great baseball player.
He was a very good baseball player. Didn't quite make it.
Was a catcher, wasn't he?
Oh, man, I can't remember. I'd have to look that up. But you got The Rock, Eddie Guerrero, Kurt Hennig. Of course, his son wrestled as as Curtis Axel, whatever name they pulled out. But his son wrestled, so third generation right there. Kerry, the Von Erichs and the Funks and Ted DiBiase Jr., and Owen Hart. Greg Valentine was actually a second-generation wrestler, but of course he's long been gone. But you had Cody and Dustin Rhodes. It's amazing when you really think about this. And even now in AEW, you've got Taz's kid Hook is out there. The Guns. You remember Billy Gunn? His sons are wrestling.
Yeah, but think about this, though. You go back to my era. You got me. I remember the advertising about Haystacks Calhoun. Mm-hmm. Now, these guys are built like out of stone.
Yeah.
They're huge. Mm-hmm. Not big. Huge. 7 feet in some cases. 6'8". Hulk Hogan. And by the way, you can thank Sylvester Stallone for making it happen for Hulk Hogan and the WWE.
Didn't hurt. Did not hurt.
Because if you remember, Hulk Hogan was a bad guy.
Yeah, actually, he was.
And
people forget that Hogan, of course, he was a heel with the NWO after the WWE run. But before that, when he was in the WWF, he was actually a heel, and he had wrestled Andre before that at Shea Stadium that one year. God, what year was that? 79 or 80, somewhere in there?
Around that time.
Yeah, Hogan was not a good guy before the Hulkamania thing.
And Rocky turned him into a legend.
Yep.
And the truth be told, he is definitely a catalyst for the WWE flying off the handle.
I personally think he was the catalyst to start all of the modern era of professional wrestling.
100%.
Everybody talks about Ric Flair and, of course, how amazing. And Rick was an amazing wrestler and doing what he was doing in the NWA at the same time.
But the best salesman was Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. And just, I remember growing up and seeing him, when I started watching wrestling was right before he won the heavyweight championship from the Iron Sheik. Right before that. That was when Sheik clobbered Backlund, and then Hogan beat the Sheik.
What people forget is Backlund was a Sammartino clone. Like, he was a Sammartino minion. That's how he ended up getting so. And he was not really the guy. He just didn't have it. He wasn't.
And he was still champ for 6 years.
Unbelievable.
It was amazing.
He didn't have that personality.
But but it's just amazing for me to see everybody's kids, and in some of these cases grandkids, wrestling now and being successful, and and it's such a hard, it used to be such a hard lifestyle, and it still is, but it's definitely different than what it was. That's for sure.
Well, let's put it this way: all those old timers have no hips, no knees, no shoulders, no elbow. I mean, they took a pounding, they took a licking, and kept on ticking.
Yes, they did,
and they didn't make the money. Now they're at least make. Actually, it's funny. They're probably making more money in the WWE than they do in the UFC.
I think it's a generally fair statement. Yeah,
only one that not McGregor's is an exception. But if you look at the WWE guys that are going back, Lesnar's making way more money in the WWE. Way more. Look at it.
Yeah. And he's not doing it. He actually was showing up more in this last run of over a year than he did in a long time. But, he was coming out to TV like 3 times, 4 pay-per-views, and making millions and millions of dollars.
When you're not making millions and millions of dollars in the fight game, you're getting your butt kicked up and down the – you're getting clobbered.
Yeah.
It's amazing stuff.
Do you blame him for not going back again?
Hell no. But what's really interesting is how many football players end up in the wrestling because they can't. They want to make a living and they're just huge, and The Rock, and his eyebrow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. So it's been a fascinating time, and it's fun seeing these kids grow up. And man, and one interesting one with AEW right now is Taz and his son Hook. His son Hook is a terrific athlete, and people are just dying over that kid. And
they're all great athletes, though.
Yes,
man,
that they are.
Remember Mil Mascaras?
I do.
Mil Mascaras.
Yes,
used to fly with the oh man.
One of the greatest self exits in a Royal Rumble ever. I almost forgot about that one. But did you ever see that? That he actually eliminated himself from the Royal Rumble he was in. He was mad about how everything was set up, and he just climbed up on top of the top rope and jumped out. Said, "I'm going home. Thanks."
When you look at the evolution of the sport, and you look at Vince McMahon, and you consider what we're looking at here, he was a genius. He is a genius. The only difference between what Vince McMahon did is he didn't make as much money as Bezos has with Amazon.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that say that Vince should be richer than what he is, which just blows me away. But it's all good.
But look, they live in Connecticut. They have a nice life. His wife was a politician. He's done pretty good for himself.
Yeah, they've done all right. They have done all right. And of course, this is the Mark Hoke Show special Saturday night edition here on KDWN 101.5 FM 720 AM, the talk of Las Vegas. I'm Mark Hoke. Thanks for being with us. Of course, normally on Sundays at 8 a.m., but we got an open time slot. And, of course, with Joe DeFalco from Future Stars of Wrestling, Andrew Fish-Fain, who also does SportsX Radio on Mondays here on KDWN. Not here tonight because they're unavailable, but Pat Casale, the underboss, sitting in.
It's a blast.
Isn't it great getting to talk about something not so serious? It's fun. But now I'm going to get you in trouble, Pat.
Okay.
Now we might start a little bit of a fight here, because I know that you and I talk about all sorts of, when we get a chance, we talk about all sorts of wrestlers from all sorts of different generations. So I'm going to be curious to hear your thoughts on this, because we don't get to talk about this. Normally on the other show we're talking news all the time and things like that. Who are the greatest wrestlers of all time? Who are the ones that really led the industry and stood out? I couldn't tell you. You punch that up, and there's lists everywhere. I'll give you one.
You have to look at that. That's like sports. When you look at the 50s, you had genius that made the sport. I can't think of the guy with the blonde hair, long blonde locks.
Gorgeous George.
Right. He started up. Which, by the way, he was Muhammad Ali's mentor psychologically. Then you look at the 60s with Sammartino into the set. When you look at each era, they all mattered. But the truth be told is the king who really put the sport where it's at, we just said it was Hulk Hogan.
I'll give you this one list. I have 100 on here, but I'll give you their top 10. Ric Flair and Bret Hart tied at number 1. Number 2 is Shawn Michaels. 3, Stone Cold Steve Austin. This one surprised me. They have this crazy point system. Randy Savage 4, Hogan 5, Sammartino 6, Rock 7, Eddie Guerrero 8, Undertaker 9, Mick Foley at 10.
You know
and
what
then they
Foley
went Cena
represents?
Rhodes, Triple H, Sting, and AJ Styles.
Foley represents the average putz that could be you could be somebody. But I'm going to tell you right now, you look at Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage is not ahead of Hulk Hogan. There's no shot.
I would agree with that.
I will tell you that Hulk Hogan starts it off. The Rock has got to be right there because The Rock has taken it. Every time The Rock is successful, when he does something, it makes WWE more successful.
That is true.
That's how you got to look at it.
Now, another guy that's usually at the top of a lot of these lists is Stone Cold Steve Austin.
100. That's number 3, and I'll tell you why. And if you watch his biography, you realize the man was a genius. He was no schmuck. That was a smart guy, and he did the right thing.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see Vince McMahon broke super emergency glass on him for WrestleMania, and actually brought him back to do a talk show with Kevin Owens that ended up being a match, and then brought on the first night, and then the second night pulled him out again to beat up Vince himself on the.
By the way, Vince McMahon back in the day was buff too.
Yeah, he was a bodybuilder.
Yeah,
he's still pretty big.
But if you look at what we just talked about, I mean, in all honesty, Sammartino is number 4 in my mind because Sammartino really was the bedrock they built off of in the 70s. When he passed the torch and finally retired, people forget Sammartino was one of the strongest human beings around.
Oh, he was a beast.
He could bench 500 pounds. I mean, he was physically, he was a freak. And it wasn't steroids. He was absolutely he was an actually great wrestler in his own right in real life. He was Sammartino was the guy that we all grew up with in the 70s because he led us into the 70s. And then, of course, you had Hulk Hogan, Thunder Lips, which it was unbelievable. And then from there on, Randy Savage just had that it factor. But Dwayne, The Rock. The Rock is. You could almost say The Rock made wrestling because of his personality, and then you got Steve Austin, who was just amazing. I mean, he was phenomenal. And then you know what? If you look at, Goldberg wasn't as charismatic as those guys. You can't even put him in the top 20. I mean, he was great.
No,
but
I don't think he can either.
I mean, he was boring, but those guys we're talking about were amazing.
Yeah, it's and people. It's funny because one of the things that people say in wrestling a lot is who's your Mount Rushmore? Who are your top 4 guys of all time? And it's almost an impossible question.
It is.
But you talk about Bruno Sammartino, and of course he was the world champion forever. Now he had the reign broken up when he said I need to take a break, and of course Ivan Koloff beat him. And
I was just going to say Ivan Koloff.
Everybody freaked out when that happened. But Bruno Sammartino, of course. WWE wasn't
then Nicola
it wasn't the global corporation it was then. It was mostly centered in the Northeast.
Absolutely.
And having an Italian champion in New York was huge. And the guy would sell at Madison Square Garden.
Unbelievable.
Constantly.
Listen, between him and between New York and Pennsylvania and New Jersey, he was there. He was all over. In Eastern Pennsylvania, I believe. He really
Pittsburgh, yeah.
He really was, and he's a blue collar guy. He was a blue collar guy. That's what made Sammartino so amazing.
And he was,
good guy.
He was such a well spoken guy too, just a great representative.
Remember him when he worked with Vince next to him when he became an announcer?
Yeah. And then of course they had a little falling out, but those things happen. But yeah,
money.
Pat's rubbing the fingers together. But it is interesting. I see Shawn Michaels at number 2 on this list. And I just as great as he was in the ring, I mean, one of probably the top 5 actual in-ring performers. But boy, I don't know if you could put him up that high. I just don't know.
See, you know what you got to look.
I mean, you look at the guys that had the impact, and
absolutely,
it was Hogan, it was Flair, it was Austin, Rock, Undertaker,
Randy Savage.
And Savage on
Macho
his
Man was genius. Genius.
He was a little crazy, though.
Really?
Just a little.
Just a little?
Yeah. He had a little bit of a temper. But, it's funny when you think about that. One of the probably his crowning match was the WrestleMania 3 match with Ricky Steamboat. And if you've never seen that, how they planned that match out, Savage, a lot of times wrestlers would call the match in the ring. If you don't know what that means, is when they pretty much they'll be told what the finish is, and then as the match is going on,
they're talking to each other.
They're talking to each other in the ring, saying, "Here's what we're going to do." Randy Savage was one of the first guys to ever plot his match out. And the Ricky Steamboat match, they literally had every little thing that they did on a piece of paper for that whole match. And they would quiz each other on it before, every day before that match actually happened. And people thought he was nuts, but now that's almost the trend.
But when you look at athletes that can move like that and throw and land safely, I mean, it was almost like a martial art within itself.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable stuff, man.
And that's what Joe DeFalco does, of course, now in Future Stars of Wrestling. He has a promotion in the wrestling, but he also has a training academy. And people don't realize how hard this is to do and do it safely. Because not only are you trying to do it safely for yourself, but you're also trying not to hurt the person you're working with.
Listen, when you're hitting somebody with a chair and making sure you don't hurt them, that's an art, man.
Yeah. Well, and just throwing a punch and not landing in their face. I mean, it's just all sorts of little things.
Well, we all both know how they used to use the foot to stamp to make the noise.
Yeah.
But you know what? Just to see the Superfly, and I mean, again, I think we've covered those 5 people we talked about right there. They would have to be the top 5 because of the way because of those 5, the sport evolved, and that's how you got to look at it. I mean, Sammartino has to be in there because he's the one that everybody aspired to be like. And he had a personality, where Backlund had no personality. He sucked. He just was boring.
Bob was the only, and a lot of people were surprised they went with Backlund there. But it's funny that I was just listening to Jim Cornette's podcast, and they were talking about the choice was coming down to Backlund and Rhodes because they wanted to bring somebody up from Florida with Eddie Graham, who ran the promotion down there, who was going to beat superstar Billy Graham. Of course, Graham was the one.
There's what people forget.
Graham was the one that knocked off Sammartino, and that was it for Bruno. But they couldn't decide, who was going to be the next guy up, and they wanted to, have instead of going more ethnic, they wanted to have an All-American champion, and they decided to go with Backlund, who, and Bob. I think Bob's really underrated, though. He's an incredibly strong man.
He's very good wrestler. He's physically gifted, but he was not. If he had Dusty Rhodes' personality, he would have been a superstar.
Yeah.
Dusty Rhodes didn't have the body to be the man to lead the sport.
Back then, yeah.
Superstar Billy Graham was actually the first real bodybuilder. And then Ivan Putski put all that muscle on me. He was amazing.
Yeah.
Putski, and Putski was all about 5'9", 5'10".
He was short. Absolutely.
And strong SLB. Boy, that man was powerful.
Yeah, and you talked about superstar Billy Graham, too, and his place in professional wrestling history. So many people patterned themselves after him because he was really, I can't say he was totally the first really flamboyant champion, but the cocky champ, and a guy that could have gotten over as a babyface if they wanted to. And they talked about it, but they never did it. But that's a guy that's very underrated.
And you know what's funny? Too. He's the first guy to tear his shirt off himself.
Yeah,
it was superstar Billy Graham who started that.
There you go.
That was the trend. People don't remember. He had big guns too.
He was huge. But yeah, and then of course you have guys like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes who led the NWA. But and before that you had the Briscoes and the Funks and and so many other. Buddy Rogers was a guy back then that was very popular.
Was legendary.
Of course, Bruno was the one that beat. Knocked off Buddy because of his heart problems. But, boy, we're getting a trip down memory lane here on Mark Hoke Show tonight, huh?
We went way back. I mean, again,
I haven't hit you with Frank Gotch yet. George Hammerschmidt. The champions from, the 1910s.
Oh, I don't know. There was, get out of here.
Yeah.
1910s.
Uh-huh.
Never heard of that.
Yeah, you got to do a little Frank Gotch and George Hammerschmidt research. They actually had one of the biggest gates at Comiskey Park ever. The irony is that you ever watch Abbott and Costello? They had wrestling in there. Then there was on the Munsters. They had that wrestling. He would wear a mask. He was the mask villain, and every time he would be beating a guy, they would cry the blues, and he would let the guy beat him. I mean, I don't know if you ever watched that. I mean, wrestling was huge. People watched Friday nights.
Like Friday night fights were big. People watched it. Like I said, during the week, we'd go on to UHF and try to find it and tune in. It was hard.
Yeah, and of course, the biggest show ever was that Saturday night's main event with Andre and Hogan in the rematch. 33 million people watched that show.
Seems like yesterday.
Yeah.
Where'd the time go?
Yeah,
Where'd this time go?
Where'd this time go? See what happens? This is fun.
It's a blast. It really was. Thank you for having me.
Pat, I appreciate Pat Casale sitting in. And, of course, don't forget, we will be with the regular showtime tomorrow, 8 a.m., so please join us then. And then you can do your Mother's Day stuff. I'm Mark Hoke. And, of course, follow us on Twitter at Mark Hoke Show, Facebook, The Mark Hoke Show, markhokeshow.com. Download those podcasts, by the way, all over the world. We really do appreciate it wherever you are on this big blue planet at markhokeshow.podbean.com or all your favorite outlets. Guys, we will see you tomorrow. Pat Casale, thank you for sitting in. I do appreciate it, buddy.
My pleasure.
And we will see you tomorrow on KDWN.